The gentleman from Minnesota is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ambassador. I want to reiterate thank you for your daunting and continued efforts in leadership in advancing the trade agenda. A couple things I want to just touch on real quick. As you well know, healthcare is playing a very increasing role in the U.S. and global economies. And there's no doubt it's the largest private sector employer in the United States. It's one of the largest and fastest growing sectors in the world economy. It's also one of America's key economic drivers of innovation and cutting edge research. And it's not just pharmaceuticals or medical devices that a lot of folks just think of. We're actually talking about opportunities in our healthcare service delivery now, in terms of express delivery, hospital design, doctors, nurses, insurance companies, health IT systems, as well as logistics. And you know, my colleague on the committee, Ron Kind, who was just speaking a minute ago, and I have even gone so far as to ask Ambassador Froman to consider adding a position that would have USTR dedicate a position on healthcare trade. Can you just comment or add some thoughts about the role or the importance that you see right now that this sector has in your work in Geneva or in trade negotiations?
Well, thank you for that question, Congressman Paulsen. And there's no question that we see healthcare as being an enormously important sector in all of the manifestations that you described. You know, just last week in Beijing, we were pressing the Chinese specifically on the information technology agreement with regard to tariffs on things like MRI machines, CAT scans, implantable medical devices. But we're also very aware, as you point out, that healthcare is not just goods; it's also significantly services. And one of the, I think, most helpful or most hopeful fora for seeking to promote those type of opportunities in terms of U.S. services is through TISA. And whether, I mean, you mentioned insurance, you mentioned health IT, logistics, you mentioned, you know, the provision of healthcare services themselves. All of those are issues that are under discussion in the TISA context right now, and we see enormous potential. Obviously, those are also part of the various bilateral and regional agreements. So we're very focused on that issue set.
Good. And let me follow up with sort of a different topic here. When the TRIPS agreement was negotiated 20 years ago, there was some disagreement whether intellectual property was truly a trade issue. And developments since then have certainly answered the question that the answer is yes. And IPR is now actively traded, whether it's in the form of cross-border licensing agreements or sales of IPR portfolios or cloud computing services and other services that allow foreign clients to have access to U.S. companies' intellectual property rights. In fact, IPR now accounts for the major portion of the value of many U.S. exports. If you take the iPod, for example, the value of Apple's IPR accounts now for far more than the value of the final product in terms of shipping and distribution and assembly. Yet there are a lot of countries within the WTO that continue to question intellectual property rights, especially copyrights and patents for innovative medicines. What are you doing to ensure that WTO members comply with those TRIPS obligations to help build greater understanding within the WTO of the importance of IPR?
Well, it's an ongoing focal point for us in terms of enforcement. And I talked earlier about the premium that this administration has placed on enforcement, and specifically on intellectual property enforcement, whether it's with regard to the TRIPS agreement and our opportunities in the WTO to pursue this multilaterally, whether it's with regard to a new negotiation like TTIP, where we have another country in the form of the European Union that actually has quite high standards with regard to intellectual property, and we see the potential to work together to create a standard that can be pointed to in future negotiations with other parties, whether it's with regard to a country like China, or India, which was mentioned as places where we have significant concerns about intellectual property compliance, and we're pursuing enforcement, whether it's through bilateral discussions or litigation. We're using the whole toolbox across the whole range of issues, precisely because I think we recognize that what intellectual property is about is innovation and protecting innovators, and we obviously want to continue to be an innovation society.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You go back.
Thank the gentleman.